Yeah, today, just gonna start the video right now. Today, the book that I'm going to be talking about is Ultimate Spider-Man, Power and Responsibility. And what this basically is it's a, like, modernized take on Spider-Man's origin story, essentially. So we have the whole Spider-Man going on a field trip, gets bitten by a spider, gets spider powers, boom, big bad guy at the end, they have a fight, done. This was made just after the movie to kind of basically profit off of that and the new Spider-Man, the new readers that would come in, hopefully off of that movie. And it does carry a lot of the storytelling, like, tropes that the movie used. A lot of this is from the first Spider-Man movie. I'll tell you what isn't, though: the villain. The way that the Ultimate Universe kind of characterizes Norman Osborn is he's an arrogant arsehole from the beginning that you can tell really doesn't like his son, and kind of whenever Harry's like tries to talk to his father, Norman's always like, get my son out of my office. This isn't the time for him to be here. Get him out. And then as soon as Norman Osborn does become the Green Goblin in the latter stages of the book, the first person he goes he goes to, kill, is Harry, and he ends up killing Harry's mum, his wife, and it's just not a really good time. And then he attacks the school and tries to kill Harry at the school, and that's when Spider-Man jumps in and goes to beat him up. The thing that I don't like about this is, I understand if you've just been bitten by a spider and you're realizing that you have powers that you don't really understand, you don't know why you've got them or anything, you're going to be a bit of a dick. But for a majority of this book, Peter Parker is a massive knobhead. He's a knobhead to Aunt May, he's a knobhead to Uncle Ben, he's a knobhead to everyone. And I get that's supposed to kind of show the flip of character, and the flip of his character is drastic. It's extremely drastic. When you get to the final stages of the book, where you see he's fully decked out as Spider-Man, he's fighting the Green Goblin at the end of the book, he's like cracking jokes, and you're like, this is the Spider-Man that I know and love. It makes getting to that point, because it is long and it is a slog, and most of the book is kind of introducing you to the world of Peter Parker and kind of setting up everything that makes Peter Parker become Spider-Man. And the problem that I have with the Ultimate Universe origin story of Spider-Man is that there's not a lot that's different. Flash Thompson is still the bully, Mary Jane's still the love interest. The only thing that Harry Osborn is still like the best friend. Uncle Ben still dies. Aunt May's still like the overprotective aunt. All the same story beats are there, only there's no Gwen Stacy. Uncle Ben and Aunt May are younger. Like, Uncle Ben has like a ponytail, and he's like the cool hip dad that everyone likes, and his nephew is just Peter Parker, is like an absolute dork. And I am interested. I want to go back and read the rest of Brian Michael Bendis' run on this, because I've heard amazing things about his run on Ultimate Spider-Man throughout the entirety, the 160 issue run. I've heard that it's amazing. Haha, amazing. Talking about Spider-Man. Yeah, but this, I don't want to say that it didn't do it for me, because it is a really good story. I read it in a day, like I couldn't put it down. But there is a lot of weird stuff, and a lot of stuff that I don't really understand. Like, scenes will change like really drastically, and it'll be like they'll spend one page on something that's not really relevant, and it'll be the only page that they spend on that storyline, that the entirety of that issue or that chapter, and then they never reference it again. They have Peter Parker take up basketball throughout like a bit of this, and that whole section doesn't really like do much to advance the plot. Maybe it shows that Peter Parker's getting his powers and he doesn't really know quite how to use them yet, so he's kind of doing everything that he couldn't do before. Yeah, and also I just don't like the design of the Ultimate Green Goblin. I just don't. He's too bulky. He looks too much like the Hulk. And there's even a point in this where they're like, the Hulk just attacked our school. It's like, and Harry's like, no, that was my dad. And it's like, but why? Why did they go with that design? If they were like, we're gonna have a Green Goblin and we're gonna base a majority of our book on the Green Goblin, on the movie, why didn't they go for a Green Goblin design that was more like the movie? I just don't like that Green Goblin design. In my mind, it's not a very good design. I don't know why. It's just not my cup of tea. Yeah, it sounds a lot like I don't like the book, and I do. Like, this is a lot better than anything Brian Michael Bendis has written in the past, like, 2-3 years. It's a lot better than anything he did on Iron Man, on Ironheart, or at his stint, or his last few years at Marvel. This is a lot better than that. But it is both very slow and very fast at the same time. I don't know how better to explain it than that. There's not really much of a better explanation than that. It's very slow, but it's very fast as well, and you don't really get a lot of motivation as for why characters act this way, especially Norman Osborn. You don't get a lot of like motivation as to why Norman Osborn is acting in this way. So as far as like having a new, updated, fresh origin story and depiction of Spider-Man, of Peter Parker, I'd say this works very well and it succeeds in what it wants to do, but I have a lot of niggles. None of them with the art. The art is breathtaking. The only real issues are the design of the Green Goblin, the lack of motivation for the actual like bad guy. Peter Parker's a bit of a knob, especially to his aunt and uncle. I get that that's the thing, and he was kind of a bit of a knob to especially his uncle in the film. But here, it's like he says some really bad stuff to his aunt and uncle, and it, you know, if if my nephew, or if I said any of that stuff to my dad, I would get banned. I would get like slapped on the jaw or something. But yeah, um, I like the design of the suit. I like that he's very spindly. I like that he doesn't just become bulky like that. I like that he's still very skinny, very scrawny, even after the spider bite. He's like, yeah, there's a bit more muscle there now, and he's got a bit more of a six pack, but he's not. His body hasn't been drastically changed by the spider bite, and he doesn't look like he's got a completely different body type when he puts the suit on, if that makes any sense. You can just see by the cover, it's a very skinny, like spindly Spider-Man. That's all I really have to say about this book. There's a few problems with grammar. That's the thing that I've noticed in a lot of Marvel books, even now. A little less back in the 80s, but coming into the 2000s, I think the editors that were working on like the grammar and fixing grammar issues got a bit lazy, especially with this. It seems to always happen in Brian Michael Bendis books. I don't know if Brian Michael Bendis is like dyslexic or anything, but there's a lot of like grammatical errors in a lot of his books. Just something that I've kind of picked up on. It's not just his books. The Daredevil book that I reviewed a couple episodes back, that had a lot of grammatical mistakes in it as well. Probably more than this, but this had grammatical mistakes as well, and I feel like I have to bring that up. And it's something that's still in the industry, especially in the big two today. Not so much in indie books, perhaps because they have a smaller team working on it, so they have like more. They have less books to check for grammatical mistakes in, and they have more time for the editors to run through each book. I think what Marvel's problem is it has so many books that come out each week and each month, and it's so many ongoing titles. The editors can't really afford to be they can't really check every single book, and they can't check the grammatical errors of every single book. And you might say to that, oh, why don't you just get a robot to do it? I doubt the comics division at Marvel or at DC or indie publishers indie publishers definitely can't afford for a machine to scan every single book. But even if they did get a machine to edit every single comic book that Marvel produced, they'd still get it wrong. So the only thing to say is have less books come out. Do you really need 7 Spider-Man titles? Do you really need do you really need so many Avengers teams? Do you really need so many X-Men books? Do you really need any of that? Have every character have one ongoing, and the Avengers, X-Men, and maybe Defenders, and Fantastic Four should be the only like ongoing team books. And if you want to do and Guardians of the Galaxy, obviously, but the stuff like Savage Avengers, stuff like West Coast Avengers, stuff like that, stuff like Symbiote Spider-Man, Spectacular Spider-Man, Symbiote Spider-Man. I said Symbiote Spider-Man before, didn't I? Superior Spider-Man, Spider-Man Life Story, Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man. Those should be minis, or the stories that you want to tell in that can be told in the main book. But yeah, that kind of doesn't have anything to do with this. But Spider-Man, Power and Responsibility, I'm gonna give it a 7 out of 10. It's a very good book. It's very enjoyable, but it does have problems and it does have niggles that I assume were ironed out as the book went on, especially with the pacing and the amount of time spent with Peter Parker before he actually becomes Spider-Man proper. I understand that you're going to need to take time to build up the world and to do some world building, but does anyone want to read like 4 straight issues of a series where there's no action at all and it's just dialogue? I don't think so. Let me know in the comments below what you think, if you've read Ultimate Spider-Man, if you've read the entire run, if you've just read this, if you've just read, or if you're like me and you've read this and the very end of that run with the death of Spider-Man. Let me know what you think. Let me know if you like the video. Give me any constructive criticism, any comments in general. Give this video a like, comment, subscribe. That's always lovely. And I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.